Good afternoon, my name is Jorge Urrutia. Through this video, I'd like to extend an invitation to the entire English-speaking community to attend an anti-censorship rally. The reason being is that Telemundo, the Spanish media conglomerate that expands beyond the United States, has started a disgusting, blatant, and insulting censorship campaign against a journalist, one of the few journalists within the Latino community that would report news of substance and that would report the truth even if it would ruffle some feathers. His name is Ruben Luengas. He is of Mexican descendants, and he used to have his own news program up until September of last year, of 2011, by the name of En Contexto, which in English means in context, which basically explains what he would do within this half-hour news program. He wouldn't just report the news, but he would also go out of his way to explain how it would affect or how it affects the Latino community and beyond. I don't know if you folks have noticed, or whoever's watching this video, that the news nowadays, not just the Spanish networks, but the English networks also have, not just nowadays, it's been going on for a while, have decided to focus on news that doesn't really reflect what's truly happening, not just in our communities in this country or around the world. It has gotten to the point where people who are interested in finding out what is going on, what's truly going on, have resorted to going online and trying to search for the truth online. I'm not saying that everything that you find on the internet is the truth or the absolute truth, since no one is the owner or owns the absolute truth, but there is a huge difference, an abysmal difference between what the information that you find through the media conglomerates or the mainstream media on TV and what you find online. Somewhere in between there, somewhere between that gray, darkish area, there is the truth, or you can find the truth if you do your research. But back to the censorship, Telemundo has decided to cancel. They canceled this program September of last year, even though a campaign was started to place phone calls and to send emails to Telemundo on behalf of the Latino community, asking them to please return it. Following that cancellation, this journalist kept that half-hour spot, and from what it seemed like, he kept his freedom to report on news that mattered. In other words, he wouldn't report on what you can find in any local news channel, stuff like a cat being stuck on top of some freaking tree, and then the firemen coming over and rescuing it, or those famous freeway chases where you have 30 highway patrol cars chasing some nut job that's being followed by the helicopter. I'm pretty sure you've noticed that sometimes those types of reports take up to 10 or 15 minutes of a news program. And I think the question to ask, which is raised in a great book that I actually want to recommend, which is called Amusing Ourselves to Death. The beginning, or the introduction to this book, which was written by the author's son, the author being Neil Postman, it says, amusing ourselves to death is a call to action. It is, in my father's words, an inquiry and a lamentation. Yes, but it aspires to greater things. It is an exhortation to do something. It's a counterpunch to what my father thought daily TV news was. Inert, consisting of information that gives us something to talk about, but cannot lead to any meaningful action. I also have a speech here, which I'm not going to read, at least not the entire thing, because it could take up to 20 minutes to do so, maybe more. But I did highlight some excerpts of this speech given by Edward Murrow, which was a journalist back in 1958, or at least that's when this speech was given at the RTNDA convention in Chicago on October 15th of that year. The RTNDA being the Radio Television News Directors Association. Please pay attention. This is extremely important. Nowadays, on Facebook, on the internet, the technology, this is not the speech, this is just a pre-comment, the technology that exists nowadays in order to supposedly save time, which it does, instead of giving us more time and to sit down and maybe read a book or a speech that might take half an hour to read, it makes us feel like today's society is in more of a rush than ever. to the point where we feel like instead of having more time because of this technology, we have less time, and we have gotten accustomed to reading little phrases or quotes by a person whose pictures is set up on, those famous Facebook pictures that they upload, and we feel good. And I'm not saying that those are bad. There are some really good quotes by Einstein, from journalists, from Gandhi, that really do make a difference in raising the awareness of our consciousness. But I think it has gotten us used to not sitting down or having the patience to take more than 20 seconds to read something of relevance. Having said all of that, I want to start it off, or I'm just going to read through the parts that I highlighted from the speech by Edward Murrow. For surely we shall pay for using the most powerful instrument, he's speaking about the TV, of communication to insulate the citizenry from the hard and demanding realities which must be faced if we are to survive. I mean the word survive literally. I am entirely persuaded that the American public is more reasonable, restrained, and more mature than most of our industry's program planners believe. Their fear of controversy is not warranted by the evidence. I have reason to know, as do many of you, that when the evidence on a controversial subject is fairly and calmly presented, the public recognizes it for what it is, an effort to illuminate rather than to agitate. Sometimes there is a clash between the public interest and the corporate interest. A telephone call or a letter from the proper quarter in Washington is treated rather more seriously than a communication from an irate but not politically potent viewer. It is tempting enough to give away a little airtime for frequently irresponsible and unwarranted utterances in an effort to temper the wind of criticism. Just once in a while, let us exalt the importance of ideas and information. Let us dream to the extent of saying that on any given Sunday night, the time normally occupied by Ed Sullivan, remember this is a speech from 1958, is given over to a clinical survey of the state of American education, and a week or two later, the time normally used by Steve Allen is devoted to a thoroughgoing study of American policy in the Middle East. Would the corporate image of their respective sponsors be damaged? Would the stockholders rise up in their wrath and complain? Would anything happen other than that a few million people would have received a little illumination on subjects that may well determine the future of this country, and therefore the future of the corporations? This method would also provide real competition between the networks as to which could outdo the others in the palatable presentation of information. It would provide an outlet for the young men of skill, and there are some even of education, or dedication, who would like to do something other than devise methods of insulating while selling. Perhaps no one will do anything about it. I have ventured to outline it against a background of criticism that may have been too harsh only because I could think of nothing better. Someone once said, I think it was Max Eastman, that, quote, the publisher serves his advertiser best who best serves his readers. I cannot believe, end quote, I cannot believe that radio and television or the corporation that finance the programs are serving well or truly their viewers or listeners or themselves. And to finalize, he says this: to those who say people wouldn't look, they wouldn't be interested, they're too complacent, indifferent, and insulated, I can only reply, there is, in one reporter's opinion, considerable evidence against that contention. But even if they are right, what have they got to lose? Because if they are right, and this instrument is good for nothing but to entertain, amuse, and insulate, then the tube is flickering now, and we will soon see the whole struggle is lost. This instrument can teach, it can illuminate, yes, and it can even inspire. But it can do so only to the extent that humans are determined to use it to those ends. Otherwise, it is merely wires and lights in a box. There is a great and perhaps decisive battle to be fought against ignorance, intolerance, and indifference. This weapon of television could be useful. The protest is going to be held on Friday, September 28th. It's in a couple of weeks around there. The address to the corporate offices of Telemundo is 3000 West Alameda Avenue, Burbank, California, 91523.